This class was recorded on International Women's Day 2021. It was a Zoom session, and you'll hear me refer to some of the students who were present for that. You'll need a strap, a blanket, maybe a wall, maybe a chair, and down in the description you'll find the playlist for this class. Let's get started.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama.
Namaste. Good morning. I'll say first, happy International Women's Day, just because it's that day. And then, like last night as I was walking the dogs, I was just sort of thinking about like this day a year ago. I think lots of people are doing that. I think lots of us are kind of reflecting on the year and like what we were maybe doing a year ago this week and teaching our last normal, not distanced classes, those sorts of things. But the word that kept coming up, like I try to listen to this when it happens, the word that kept showing what was disruption and disruptive. And started thinking about like the negative side of disruption and disruptiveness first, and then also thought about the positives that come along with disruption. And the list of negatives is not necessary to go through, right? Life has been disrupted, and that's just the way it is. But there's also not being nostalgic and not being sort of off the mark, but there's a disruption that happened in life that maybe also needed to happen, like a disruption in thinking, a disruptive quality that broke us out of habits, changed our way of seeing what's possible. And I'm not ready to like celebrate that yet necessarily, but I am ready to acknowledge the fact that those disruptions were different than the other disruptions, and that disrupting the normal pattern can also be something that we actively do. And when we disrupt normal patterns, it also gives us a chance to expand our thinking, to expand the idea of potential, to expand what we can do with what we have. So I'd like to just sit with that idea for a moment before we begin to move or do anything specific. So set your hands anywhere you like. A hand on your heart and a hand on a belly feels really great right now. And you can allow yourself just to sink into the fullness of your breath. And you might pinpoint, you might label, you might circle what was, is currently being, might always, forever from this moment, be disrupted. And then after you've done that, or in the process of doing that, ask yourself what is on the other side of that disruption. Whether that's something that serves or doesn't serve, grows or doesn't grow, something that might be suffering, or something that might have, as a result of breaking up a pattern, brought you to a new, unfamiliar, or perhaps forgotten joy. Allow yourself to breathe that in on whichever side of the coin it exists. Breathe it in, savor it, and also let it go, no matter what side of the coin it's on. Right? So if it's a joy, also be willing to let that go. Think about disruption, think about change, think about expectation falling by the wayside. The transient nature of things is exposed. Temporary quality of all things exposed. Sit for another moment and just let the tip of your tongue find the back of your upper teeth. that trigger just a little resistance in how your diaphragm contracts as you breathe in. And then you can decide if you want to keep your hands in the shape that they're in or find a new place as we share the sound of Om together. Let your hands start to drop away. And as you rearrange yourself and start to settle onto all fours, you can feel free to start your playlist if you're using that. If you want to hit a child's pose before you come to all fours, that's also really great, and just take a few breaths in that experience. And then eventually start to find your way to sitting on your heels. If sitting on your heels doesn't work so well, you can always sit on your bum for sure. Have your palms turned open so that you've got a nice elbow crease naturally by your sides without feeling like you're pinning your elbows in or doing anything aggressive. You do want to bring all of your fingers together just to bring them into a kind of closed place. Your thumbs can stay open. And then start with one arm at a time. So you can move your left arm out to the left side and then draw it back in. And then move your right arm out to the right side. And you can do that kind of looking in the direction, so it adds a little tiny smidge of rotation to your torso as you open up your arm. And so playing with this external rotation in your shoulder, a little rotation in your spine, these single arms. Notice the action back around your shoulder blade. And if it feels pinchy, then you're probably going further than you need to. You know? Do one more round with a single arm, and you can always keep the single arm. And then see if both arms can move at the same time. And what you're doing, or maybe what you're not doing, is doing a big chest opening as you open your arms. So notice if you want to spread your chest really wide just to get your arms out wider, and see if you can just go to your range of motion, find the muscular action, let whatever heart opening can come, right? Disrupting the idea that we always need to open up our heart more. You can still trade your gaze side to side. I find that really helps with any tension that wants to show up in your neck. And just 3 more of these. And hopefully you can feel a little bit of heat building up right at the base of your armpit where it connects to your back. Last one. Good. And then drop your palms down onto your thighs and do a couple of forward shoulder rolls. So you really spread open your scapula, you spread open your upper back as you pour forward. And that might be your exhale when you round. It could also be an inhale, and you can play with both of those. Last couple. Good. And then when you bring your hands up this time, start with your palms open the same way, pinky to pinky. So you smush those edges together, and then elbow to elbow, right? And if that already feels like a big ask to bring your elbows together in front of you, or if you have to kind of really lean back to get there, soften a little bit. Don't force. If your elbows come together relatively happily, then see if you can lift that up in front of you. So you've got your palms facing you, kind of like you're holding a mirror above your eye line, and keep your elbows together. If having your hands open like this kind of gets in the way, you could interlace your fingers. You choose interlaced with palms together or pinky. And then as you exhale, draw your elbows in toward your belly so there's some roundness. And then lean a little bit over to your left. And then draw a circle up in front of you with your elbows that go up. You feel yourself leaning over to the right. And then you complete that circle into your belly. And then you lift that up in front of you, again, without a big back bend. And then exhale your elbows into your belly. Lean over to your right. Draw a circle with your elbow points out in front of you. And then back around toward your belly. And then back up. We'll go in each direction one more time. So exhale your elbows in. Lean over to your left. Draw a circle with your elbow points out in front of you. There is nothing easy about this, okay? I'm just telling you. So if you're thinking like, this is really hard, or maybe it should be easier, and then back up, there's nothing easy about it. And then draw in, lean over to your right, and then your elbows shoot forward, and you draw a little circle right in front of your heart, like making a bullseye. And then you bring it back around into your belly, and then you come back, and you release cactus arms, and then do some jazz hands while you've got cactus arms, right? So you probably feel a lot of life right on the front of your chest there, yeah? And then come to all fours. And when you get to all fours, give a nice spread out through your hands. And feel your spine like as natural as possible so that you're not trying to flatten any of the curves, but you're also not rounding or arching. And then when you breathe in, press into your hands, spread your upper back so you separate your scapula, you protract them. And then you exhale and you narrow your shoulder blades. And you press and you spread. And then you sink in. And you're watching out for buzzard neck, right? So notice if you do anything scrunchy with your neck when you narrow your shoulder blades. Keep spreading open. And notice if you do anything kind of rounded with your neck. See if you can keep it stable. Just a couple more times. Spreading open. Narrowing in. One more time. Spread open. And narrow in. Good. And then find that sense of neutral again. Move your knees backward. So it kind of feels like you were going to stretch out onto your belly, but along the way, drop your elbows so that they land pretty much under your shoulders. And you might notice that you get an immediate desire to sort of sag in your low back and pull your belly in, or let your belly drop. See if you can just hug in a little bit of that. So this might be your place, just hanging out. Or you can move your elbows forward a smidgen and turn your hands into a prayer. So you've got your pinky edges on the ground. And again, watch out for sinking your shoulders up to your ears. Press a little bit and then drop your head so you can look back through your arms and see your knees. So that can be your stopping place. But really anchor into the pinky side of your hand. And also notice if the top of your foot wants to leave the ground. And then see if you might add a bend to your elbows so your prayer fingers start to angle almost to the ceiling, maybe not quite. And then press into your legs and your elbows and spread open through your scapula so you tuck your chin into your chest. And then do the opposite and let yourself sink a little bit. Open up some space from your armpit to your elbow. And then breathe in and spread. And then exhale. So it's like doing a little cat-cow, but with a reverse breath. Press and spread. And then sink in. Do that one more time. So you press and spread. And then you sink in. And maybe your forehead comes to the mat. You can stay like that, but hug in some at your rib cage. And maybe your thumbs start to get closer to your neck. Kind of letting your arms make room for your skull. So you're not getting into a big back bend, but hopefully you feel some length through your outer arm, down through your lats. You can always play for a moment, lift through your forehead, sneak your hairline down, deepen the connection thumbs to your neck, and then pull in at your belly again. So that should feel like it's mostly in your triceps on the back of your arm. If you're feeling pinchy, sharp in your shoulder, make something else up. Give yourself one more moment. And then start to release your arms if they're bent. Lift your head. And then walk your elbows forward. So it almost feels like you're going to come down into Sphinx. But I'm still floating at my pelvis. Pinky edges of your hands, you can even make a soft fist with your hands. So watch out for pooching up with your butt or doing the opposite, a big tuck. Let your pelvis have some of its natural weight without any extra squeeze. And then play with that scapular movement again. So press the ground with your elbows and forearms to spread your shoulder blades and then sink in, just like you did on all fours. So watch out for buzzard necks, press and spread, narrow. And because your pelvis came forward and your hips are floating without sagging, you might feel some warmth and life and goodness around your belly. 3 more times. Press and spread. So you get to use your lats here. Everybody's favorite to use, I'm sure. And you also get to spread your shoulder blades apart. So you move that outer side of your rib cage into action. One last press and sink. And then you can adjust your hands one at a time. All fours becomes downward facing dog. Take your time getting there. There's no hurry. There's no rush. And as you get into downward facing dog, add some extra length through your reach. So that might mean that you bend your knees some, find a little more depth in your hip crease, and a little more length overall from your hips to your fingers. And pause for a breath in and a breath out. And then you can start to walk forward. And pour into yourself. So when you're folding over, see if you can soften to the point of making some connection between your ribs and your thighs, and then let the rest of your spine just pour out of that connection. Connect to release. If you want to hold your opposite elbows here, you can for sure. Give your head a little tick-tock. Good. And then release any grip and start to roll yourself up. Standing tall. Letting everything pour out. So when your arms are resting down by your sides in Tadasana, you might do a couple shoulder rolls again there. So there's a sense of a heavy arm that might be open with the shoulder without it being a heavy arm that's pinching at your shoulder blades. Give yourself one more exhale. And then as your hands move into a prayer in front of you, turn that into open palms, elbows together. Lift that up about the height of your nose and then tip some space into your heart. Keep that connection on the way forward. Turn it back into a prayer and then release your hands down by your feet. Step your right leg back for a long lunge. Breathe in. And then back to high hips for downward facing dog. Stretch out long for plank pose. Breathe in. So feel some spread across your upper back. Narrow that space as you lower all the way down. Point your toes. Do a little lift of cobra. Breathe in. And then back you go, downward facing dog. Lead from the ground up. So press, lengthen, and then your hips. Step your right foot forward. Breathe all the way in. Exhale your left foot next to your right and fold over yourself. You can hook your thumbs together to reach your arms up. Turn that into a high prayer and then pull it into your chest and release your arms, Tadasana. So there's a little prayer in front of your belly, open palms, elbows together. Tip that up, open your chest. Keep that connection, pour forward, and then release. Send your left leg back, take a long lunge. High through both hips, downward facing dog. Roll out long for plank pose. Keep it strong through your heels so you're strong through your legs. and then hug your elbows in, go all the way to the ground. Point your toes, little lift from the ground up, cobra. Hug in your elbows, and then travel back, curl under your toes, press the ground away to find downward dog. Inhale your left foot to the front of your mat, opening up your chest as you finish your breath in. Step forward with your feet meeting. Fold into your legs, Uttanasana. You can hook your thumbs, reach your arms up, frame your head, and then pull that down and release your arms. So a prayer turns into a platter, turns into elbows together, lifting and opening. So you've got this open back and an open heart. Interesting. Come down, fold over, touch down. Step back with your right toes. Downward facing. Ripple out long for plank. Keep your shoulders away from your ears. Hug in, and you can go all the way or part of the way down. You can keep cobra or add upward facing. Downward facing dog. You can see where your hands are, and you choose if you step or walk or jump to get there. Little tent of your fingers to open up your chest, hinge your ribs to your thighs, and then fold deep. Hook your thumbs to reach up, Urdhva. Pull in a prayer, and release your arms. The prayer goes in front, you platter your hands, pinkies, elbows, open up. And then fold, keep the connection. Drop your hands. Inhale your left leg away, open up your chest. Step high with your hips, downward facing dog. Stretch it out long, strong legs. Lower the way, halfway, all the way. Flip your toes, up dog or cobra. Downward facing dog as you breathe out. See where your hands are, and you can step, or you can walk, or you can jump there. Give some extension to your upper spine, so you peek forward some more, and then fold all of that into yourself. Hook your thumbs and reach, and then draw down a prayer, and release your arms. And then pause for a moment, and just investigate, feel the two sides, chest and back at the same time. Feel them with your mind and feel them with your breath. And then when you bend your knees to lift your arms, Utkatasana. Feel some freedom in your arms, not needing to pin them together anymore. And then exhale, fold over yourself, touch down. And you can step or walk or jump backward, Chaturanga. Feel free to step into plank and lower, or step into plank and go right into downward facing dog. Breathe all the way out when you get there. And then inhale your right foot forward, anchor into your left heel. Cartwheel up so there's a sense of warrior two. But then one more time with these platter hands, elbows together. Lift that in front of your face like when you were sitting. And again, you could have palms or interlaced fingers, and then just track your elbows back in the direction of your left baby toe, but look over your right shoulder, right? Right? And you can always take away what doesn't work, simplify what doesn't feel good, but keep moving your elbows together there, if that works for you. Notice your right knee. You can just kind of peek over your right shoulder and make sure it's where you want it to be, right over the center of your ankle. Free up your arms, kind of like taking off clothes that are too tight, and then cartwheel your hands down to the ground. Step back and lower if you like. Flip your toes along the way, and then meet up for downward facing. Inhale your left foot up to the front. Exhale your right heel into the ground. Cartwheel up to find your way there. And then one last time on this side, pinky edge platter, elbows up in front. So your body won't turn as much as you like it at first. I don't think it's possible, but then track your elbows so they move, and then let your torso come along with that. So you kind of hide your face and you peek over at your left knee and notice if it's wavering in a lot, and then bring it back to where it wants to be. Breathing in. There might be some shaking in your arm muscles. If there is, you're very normal. Give yourself one more breath. And then release that and feel more space across your chest. Cartwheel your hands down. Step your way back. Lower yourself down. And then meet up after you open that downward facing. Step your right foot forward and anchor into your back heel. Cartwheel up that same way. Stick your arms out in front of you and cross your left arm underneath. So you just make an X with your elbows. Bend your left elbow so your left fingers go up toward the ceiling. Keep sending your right arm out in the direction of your gaze. Look back over your left shoulder. Narrow the space at your left ribs so you have this peaceful feeling, but stretch your right arm even longer. See if both elbows can lift away from your chest a smidge. And then as you even that out, stretch your right leg to drop your right fingers to a block, the floor, your shin for triangle pose. Breathing across your two arms. Hug in a little bit, Jack, at the base of your belly. Fill in some of your back body. Turning open. Good, and then right from there, you can see the ground. Bend your knee. Step into plank with a breath in. Lower chaturanga or all the way. Up dog or something smaller to get back to down dog. Inhale your left foot forward. Anchor into your right heel. Cartwheel up with that idea of two. Both arms out in front. So some of us were playing with steering wheels on Wednesday. And this is a moment where you can check out your left knee. Because this is where, yep, I saw that, yep. And then cross under with your right arm. So you make the X and then bend your right elbow so it hooks across. Keep the reach of your left arm so you feel your left shoulder blade coming away from your spine a little bit, and then tip back peaceful like. So your right waist gets shorter and your left waist gets longer, but you press through your back foot. Unravel that as length comes into your left leg. You can drop your left fingers down to the floor. Somewhere else is great. Turning open, but then still feel like there's room to draw in your ribs, room to draw in your front, and then at the same time, have openness. So an open back and an open heart, right? Because the lungs want to breathe on your back body too. Give yourself just a little bit more lift through your left arches, and then let that translate all the way into the expansion of your right arm. Good, and then you can see the ground. Bend your knee. Step through what you're stepping through. And eventually, meet up with each other, back at downward facing dog. Inhale your right foot forward. Anchor into your left heel. Cartwheel up so you can do anything that you've done before, or you can fully eagle your arms here, wrapping your left arm under. You can hold onto your right wrist. If that feels a little bit funky in your wrist, you can always simplify that and let your left fingers just hook on your right thumb. Lift your elbows some, and then track. So your elbows revolve, and you can look all the way back to the back of your mat. So you really feel spacious across your right shoulder, and then start to lean. So your right shoulder moves toward your right thigh, but you're not looking. Lean in that direction, and then draw your right hip in some more. Now take a peek. See where your knee is and see if you can lower one more smidge so you're just floating in that space. One last breath. And then release your right finger somewhere to the outside of your right toes on your way to Ardha Chandrasana. Freeing your arms, opening your legs. Turning your gaze, not just up, but maybe you turn it into your chest. See your left toes. Turn it in the opposite direction toward a wall in front of you. Right? It will mess with your balance. And then you can see your thumb. Bend your standing leg, reach way back with your left toes, peaceful warrior, everything is open. Cartwheel right into Chaturanga Dandasana. Urdhva Mukha, something smaller. Adho Mukha. Inhale your left foot forward one more time. Exhale into your right heel. As you're cartwheeling up, you can already hook your right elbow underneath your left elbow. So full eagle arms. You can use your right fingers to just hook on your left thumb, or you can grab hold of your left wrist. You could pray your hands together and then track your elbows back in the direction of your right baby toe. Keep looking in that direction. Hinge your left hip deeper. So you spread your left shoulder blade off your spine, but at the same time, keep drawing your left thigh back into the socket. And then eventually take a little peek down and then see if you can descend 1 more centimeter. Release your arms, drop your left fingers. You're on your way to Ardha Chandrasana. Opening up your right arm along the way. And then notice if you have a habit where you automatically think, I gotta look up at my hand. Look somewhere else. And then see what that does for you when you look somewhere else. Sometimes it messes everything up. And then sometimes it'll give you a new insight. One last breath. And then soften. Reach back. Tip back. Peaceful warrior. Cartwheel your hands down right into Chaturanga, right into anything else. We'll meet up with each other when we get back to downward facing. Over your toes. High through your hips. Give yourself a whole breath right here. And then you can see where your hands are and you can step or walk or jump to get there. Fold into yourself. Bend your knees to stand up for Utkatasana. And then release your arms, Tadasana. And then again, feel, notice what's changed, right? Notice the muscles that you've turned on and just let them stay on by themselves for a moment. Yeah? Sink the weight over into your right foot, a bend in your right knee. So when you start to take your left leg across the top, just tent your left toes on the floor. So you're not trying to eagle your leg all the way around in this moment. And then goalpost your arms. So now feel how you can naturally fall into openness. Breathing in. So there is some work across your upper back to come into that space, but it's moving in the opposite direction. And then let your palms rotate down and press back until your arms fire up right at the top side of your arm. So you feel your triceps turning on. Right from there, draw up your left knee and send back your left leg. Getting longer. So you feel the action on the back of your arms and then find some action on the back of your left leg. Virabhadrasana 3. Breathing all the way in and out. And then soften through your standing leg. Reach way back with your toes. Arms up for a high lunge. And then exhale your hands down to the ground. Planks and so ons and so forths as you like, as you need. Meeting up when you get back to downward dog. And then you can step or walk or jump to get to the front of your mat. Stretch some length, fold that length. Zigzag up Utkata. And then release, release, release. Put the weight over into your left foot. Bend your left knee. Lay your right thigh over the top of your left thigh. And then the ball mound of your right foot comes to the floor. If that feels far away, you could always put a block under your foot. Goalpost your arms. Notice your hip crease. So one's to have its depth, but notice if that translates into squeezing at your low back. broadening across your chest. You can have your fingers open or drawn together. And then turn down, press back. Feel your triceps turn on. Draw up your right knee, and then reach back with your right toes. So you might take a peek at your standing knee and see where your standing thigh is, and then maybe even lower your right toes into view just to know where they are, and then send them up again without opening your hip. And then your gaze can go forward. And then that might open some more chest. And then soften through your standing leg. Reach way back. High lunge. Feel the fire kind of dissipate in your upper arm. Release your hands down. Step through a plank, lower through something. Open up. And then meet back at downward dog. And then you can step or walk or jump your way up. Lengthen your spine, Ardha Uttanasana. Exhale into your legs. Uttanasana. Utkatasana on the way up. And then release. Put the weight into your right foot. Bend your right knee. Hook your left leg over the top, but now let your left foot float, So you're still directing your left heel toward your right leg, but it doesn't need to hook onto anything. So you can wing your left foot out to the right some, and then hug it to your right leg, and then just feel what that does to your two knees. It creates a kind of a squeeze there. Goalpost your arms. Give yourself a moment here. Good. And then let your hands sink and just grab hold of your right wrist behind your pelvis there. Give yourself a moment. One last breath. And then move your left foot back into a shortish lunge. And then see if you can bring your wrist grab up into the small of your back. Wing your elbows forward there, and then wing them back. And then wing them forward and see if your hands can travel up one more notch. And then wing them back, and maybe your thumbs touch your inner shoulder blades. And then wing them forward and see if your hands might go up. It's always see if, right? Not must. See if you can take your hands into a prayer there. And then turn it into more of a lunge. So the prayer is behind your heart. Giving yourself a whole breath in and a whole breath out. You can always hold your opposite elbows here. No forcing. One last breath. Shift some weight into your right foot. Lengthen through your right leg. Send your left heel straight back and down to open up through your chest. And then you can fold over yourself. Harjvotanasana. So if there's a prayer, you can dig your pinky fingers into your spine so you feel your elbows moving away from the ground. If you're holding your opposite elbows, just consciously lift your elbows away from the ground. Work against gravity a little bit. One last breath. Good, and then let your hands slide down past your tail, hands to the ground. Turn it into a lunge. Move through any kind of vinyasa that suits you until you meet back up at downward facing dog. See where your hands are, and you can step or walk or jump. Open up, and then fold deep. Zigzag up, Utkatasana. And then stand up, Tadasana. Put the weight into your left foot, thigh over thigh. So your right thigh comes over, and at first, let your right foot kind of kick out to the left, and feel what that just does to the whole situation of your knees. And then draw your right heel bone and right ankle toward your left leg, like you might go around. Goalpost your arms. Give yourself a moment. And then let your hands drop so you can grab the other wrist. So I'm going to grab my left wrist this time, right on the back of my sacrum. Step into a shortish lunge. And just pause there. So there's a little bend in both knees. Happily stay this way. Or you can draw your shoulders and elbows forward. Spread open some space, kind of wing, and then wing them back. And then in that winging forward, so you round some, see if your hands can come up your back some. And then you can wing them back. Your thumbs might tickle your scapula. And then draw forward, and maybe your hands go up one more notch. Backs of your hands. And then you can open up, and your hands might start to form a prayer there. Might not. You could always punch your fists together. Add some length to your back leg, so you still have your back heel going back in space. Give yourself one last breath. Shift some weight. Shorten your stance. Send your right heel long out behind you. So as you start to fold over, you keep your right toes facing forward mostly. Dig your pinky fingers into your spine right behind your heart. Folding your face over your leg. In that direction, right? Breathing all the way out. Good, one last breath. Let your hands slither down your back. Release them to the ground. Deepen your lunge. And then move through the vinyasa of your choice. You can always leave that out and go right into down dog. And then see where your hands are so you can step or walk or jump to get there. Let's move through that one more time on each side. So Utkatasana. And then Tadasana. Put the weight into your right leg. Take your left thigh over. So you can start with that swing out of your left foot. And then as it draws in, it might hook behind your right thigh. Start with your goalpost. Open that up. Breathe in. And then put the whole eagle together. So your left elbow goes under your right elbow. Lift your elbow some. So feel the spread in your back. And then deepen your hip crease. Give yourself one more deepening at your belly. Stay low and crouchy as you undo your left leg. So feel like you're visiting warrior 3 again. But then move your right hand to your hip and your left fingers to the floor. Look at your standing leg and then see your lifted leg. If you're like me, I have a tendency to go way out past my midline, but draw into that space and then revolve. So you can just turn your gaze or you can add your right arm into the sky. Drawing your right shoulder blade around toward your back. Just one more breath. And then as you drop your right fingers, tuck your left leg in behind you. Have a seat on your bum so you can twist over to the right. Ardha Matsyendrasana. You can always have your left leg out long in front of you. Shailia, see if you can step your right foot a little more center on your mat. And then tuck your left knee in closer to that space behind your right foot. Yeah. Yep. And it might not step all the way over, but if you can even just line them up so they're getting closer, narrows everything in. One last moment here. Twisting from a seat and twisting from your spine rather than only twisting at your head. Good. And then take a counter twist over to the left. Unravel and take both hands sort of down by your hips here. So you can turn your fingers outward or backward, but outward's probably enough. Let your feet come in pretty close to your body. So you can walk in to kind of crunch into yourself. And then once you're there, press the ground and simply roll back your shoulders. So the closer you get, the more that might feel like work. Opening up your chest by lengthening your elbows and rolling back your shoulders. Give yourself one more breath right there. And then a little lift up your bum. So you come up maybe an inch off the ground. Rock up onto the ball of your left foot and cross your right ankle onto your left thigh. Flex your right foot, open up your thigh, and let your left knee descend and go forward. So there's an opening at your chest, and you're adding some length through the front of your left thigh, right? But it shouldn't feel like there's big changes happening in your shoulder. The biggest change happens from the top of your left thigh down to your knee. And then ease that back. Sit on down. Turn your fingers to the back. And you can stay right here, right? Or you can move your feet forward just enough to drop your heels and then open up an altar pose there. So you open up your chest and your pelvis. One last breath. Lower your hips. Cross your legs. Any vinyasa you like. Meeting up eventually. Downward facing dog. And then see your hands, and you can step, walk, or jump to get to the front. Fold into yourself. One last time, Utkatasana. And then stand all the way up, Tadasana. Put the weight over into your left foot. Bend your left knee. Take your right thigh over. So you could have it unhooked, you could perch again, or you could wing out, find some room, and then hook your right toes around the back of your left leg. Goal post for a moment. Find some broadness across your chest. And then right elbow under. So it could be just that elbow hook you did before with your left arm out in front. That'll do the trick too. Or you can wrap, wrap, wrap. The two sides don't feel like the same to me. So you don't have to do the same thing in terms of your elbows there. Go one last breath. And then feel yourself slowly unraveling. You're already leveling out through your spine. And then your left hand to your left hip, your right fingers to the floor or your block, and then eyeball your right toes. And see if just having thought about it on the other side already made a difference. Find the length in your spine, and then open your left arm into the sky if you like. But notice what might have been disrupted by raising your arm, right? Did the whole shape suddenly feel disrupted? And then you can go back to the way it was and put your hand on your hip. Good. Drop your left hand, tuck your right knee in behind you, and have a seat, Ardha Matsyendrasana. So your left foot may or may not have stepped all the way to the outside of your right thigh. And then twist over to the left side. Give yourself a lot of length potential without it having to be a back bend, right? So feel everything getting taller. One last moment there. See if your right shoulder now, Shalia, can drop away from your ear. Good. Counter twist over to the right. Good. Undo that. Hands by your hips. You can start with your fingers out, or if you want to turn them back already, you can. Bring your feet in pretty close. So there's that sense of having to press down to open up. This is a good place to be, right? Or you can begin to lift your hips that little smidge. Rock forward on the ball of your right foot so your left ankle can cross onto your right thigh. And then flex your left foot, descend your right knee so you really feel length from your right hip down to your right knee. Only going to the place where you still feel like you can breathe and where there's control. Yeah. Sometimes we feel wobbly and there's something to learn in that too. And other times we feel like we are out of control and there's nothing to learn from that at all. Good. And then ease yourself back down. Turn your fingers to the back if they're out to the side. Find a little bit more opening in your shoulders, and then your feet can go forward a smidge. If you want to have longer legs there for more of a Purvottanasana, you can. or open up an altar pose. And notice when your shoulders want to shift in that transition. Opening up. Breathing in. And out. Good. And then ease yourself down. Cross your legs. Move through any vinyasa that you like. Get yourself into downward facing dog right away if that's better. And then simply pause. Give yourself a whole breath in to feel. And feel without judging. Yeah. Examine, inquire, investigate, and then let it go. Good. And then drop down to your knees. You can point your toes. Drop your elbows. Maybe they're already right in front of your knees. They might be a little bit more forward, and you'll understand what that means in a moment. And then pray your hands together. So it kind of feels like you're in a sphinx. Feel your shoulder right over your elbow. And then when you lift your hips up a little bit, you can dip your shoulders forward to curl your toes. And then from there, press into your forearms, elbows, hands to lengthen your legs so it becomes this very short dolphin experience. So if that already felt impossible or pinchy or just unpleasant, you can drop it down and give yourself more length, setting up your elbows further forward. And then while you're here, play with that same scapular kind of push-up. So spread as much or press into the ground and think about spreading your shoulder blades when you breathe in, and then exhale, sink. Spread. Won't be the same kind of spread, right? You're not going to be able to fully protract here, but think about it and then sink. Last 3 times like that. Spread and sink. 2 more. And sink. Notice if your head's doing all the lifting. So if your head lifts to see your hands when you push your arms down, soften that. And then drop to your knees. Undo your toes. Roll your shoulders a couple times in both directions. Good, and then here's where you're going to need your blanket and maybe some wall, right? So you can set up toward a wall and put a blanket at the floor to support your knee. If you don't have a wall, you can pretend that you have a wall and lay a chair down in that space. And then you can get kind of drapey with a blanket so it pads the chair if it needs to, and also finds the floor. So I can create a wall where there's no wall. And then when you're there, your left knee is going to be on the floor with your left foot pointed up the wall. And then you can lunge your right foot forward so that it's relatively above your ankle, right? Setting up, most people just call this wall torture, right? So you can go into just a little bit of wall torture. If being down is the best place to be, then stay down, right? If you're coming up, you can take your hands, flat palms, back toward the wall that's behind you, kind of like when you're moving into Warrior 3. If there's a chair there, you can always hold on to the seat of the chair, and that adds a little bit more rotation possibility through your shoulders. But your main focus here is what's happening in your left thigh, right? Feel what's happening in your left thigh. Find space there. You can keep your hands against the wall, or if you're at a wall, you can raise your arms up alongside your head. And then your thumbs can touch the wall. If you're at a chair, you can walk your hands a little bit further back on the chair. And if there's an arm there, you can grab hold of it. So then you get more of a sense of an open chest. You can get some of that by tipping your fingers against the wall and then bending your knee some more, but then you lose some of the thigh. You want to focus on your quad here. Breathing all the way in. And out. One last breath. Good. And then hands down. And then undo and redo for the other side, right? So if you're at the wall, you can use the wall. If you're at a chair, you can use a chair. I'll use the wall this time just for the sake of showing the difference. So have your right knee padded this time, your foot against the wall. So that means I come in pretty close. You can keep your hands down on the floor, or you can stand your hands on your knee. Notice if you kind of go like shoulders up by your ears and like, when is this going to be over? That's a good time to keep your hands down. Or you can disrupt your expectations too and feel like, oh, who knew I had this space? Get taller. And then your palms can go to the wall behind you. Opening up. And even there, you can just roll your shoulders back to the point that your elbow points also touch the wall. So you've got your full forearm bone moving into the wall. You can keep it there or raise your arms up and let your thumbs, Fonzie, I'll use that again, Sarah. You can Fonzie your thumbs against the wall. And that just gives you a different sense of openness in your chest. And hopefully you feel like you're above the boniest part of your kneecap and really up in the femur when you're up like this. So not on your kneecap directly. One last breath. Good, and then release. Move away from the wall if you went over there. Rejoin your mat. If you want to stay where you are, that's great. But do you have your strap handy? And then you can keep your blanket within grabbing range as well. Bring your right shin forward and stretch your left leg out long behind you. So your blanket could come underneath your right hip to set that up. Deepen into your right hip crease as you're sinking into pigeon. Pausing here. Great place to hang out, or you can take your strap, right? You just need a little loop around your foot, so not holding a big tail. And then you can hold onto it. So my palm is facing up. So if I take my arm back, I have to turn open like that platter and loop there, keeping a soft elbow, just like the platter. So there's a sense of drawing my left arm toward my body that draws my left shoulder blade around, and then I can keep spinning my chest. You can stay like that, or you can keep holding the loop to draw your elbow around toward your face. So my palm ends up facing down now as I sink in. And then like that dolphin, see if you can feel your forearm, or your upper arm rather, kind of feeling vertical next to your head. And then right where it wants to get pulled, you engage a little bit on your front body. So you engage around your abdominal some and hug in to track your arm forward rather than just letting it get pulled out of the socket. One last breath. And then slowly move in reverse. So your elbow drops away toward your ribs. Your hand opens up. And then you can let that go. And then flip to the other side. And just change your left shin up forward for pigeon. Sink in. Happily stay this way. It doesn't need to be anything else, right? Hang with pigeon. Or you can take a loop back to your right foot. Sometimes that's the hardest part. It's getting the loop there. And then palm open when you're there. So you could even use a Fonzie thumb there, Sarah, and sort of stick your thumb into it so your thumb is in the loop. And so that when I start to wrap my elbow around, I can use the thumb to hook. So that as my elbow comes around, there's the space in my right thigh, right, that you were just working on. You can tense your left fingers somewhere outside your left thigh. And there's a tendency to want to press your foot back to drag your spine back more. See if you can avoid that. Let your arm hug in, let your front body get strong. And your arm will still track back a little bit, but you probably won't feel any crunching in your low back as a result. Your gaze can pick up some. Good. And then unravel in reverse. Move your strap away. If the blanket's there, you can move it away. And then your legs can swing around. And roll down to your back. And when you get down to your back, have the soles of your feet flat. Let yourself sink in there for a moment just to feel, notice, experience. Graze the back of your heels if that gives you a lot of good information. And then let your hands, so remember that earlier prayer, platter, elbow. Move that right up in line with your nose for a moment so you feel some life and action across your upper back. And then right where it is, separate it. Turn your palms up to the ceiling and then drop your palms to the floor near your head. Right? Do it one more time just so you kind of, now that you know it's coming. Palms in front of your pelvis, platter, elbows. Notice the work there. Draw your elbows up in line with your nose. And then right from there, separate, palms to the ceiling. Extend your palm and drop your palm to the ground. And you can stay right there, or you can start to press into your feet to lift your hips. You can stay right there, or press into your hands to travel up the rest of the way. Still keeping your tongue toward the roof of your mouth. Good. And then ease on down. Let your arms lay down on the floor next to your body. You can roll your wrists around. And then you have an option. You can have another wheel if you like, or you can flip over and stand on your knees for an Ustrasana. Your choice. I'm going to have an Ustrasana. You can have your toes pointed or curled. And then a little bit like when you're moving from that goalpost. So you can even start with goalpost if you're going in this direction. Find the space without it all turning into hanging out, crunching in your low back. So find that and then press it down just like before and turn on the back of your arms. So feel like you're pressing. Now press into your shins and let your pelvis come forward some. Turn your palms open. And maybe you touch your heels. Let your head go. And then chin to your chest. Release your hands. Have a seat. And then if you came up to your knees, you can roll down onto your back one more time and have some windshield wipering of your knees. Taking them side to side. Good. And then you can hold the back of your thighs right at your knee crease and rock a couple times. So if you keep your thighs away from your body and keep your arm fully extended, you can focus on rolling and rocking through your low back. And then you can rock that all the way up. And then once you're up, bring the soles of your feet together. Feel free to prop up a little bit And then like earlier when you were getting ready for an altar pose, take your hands, turn them to the back so I can feel the ridge of my wrist right against my bum there. I'm going to tent my fingers. Focus on sitting up. Focus on opening some space across your thighs and roll your shoulders back. And then once you're there, you can make any adjustments with your hands. So if your hands want to move back a little bit, or if your palms want to flatten more, you can. But then head nod, so your gaze goes up. And then your gaze goes in. But everything else is still alive. Everything else is still working to some degrees. So the openness in your thighs isn't just open and forget about it, but I'm still pressing toward the ground with my thighs. Same thing in my shoulders. I'm consciously trying to keep them back. There's a lot of heat and fire still on the back side of my body. One last breath here. Good. And then let your head find something like neutral. Narrow your thighs. And then when you stretch out your legs, just take your heels slightly wider than your mat. So not a big wide straddle. Take your hands to your shins first and let your ankles point. And then it's going to be the opposite. So let your chin drop into your chest. Slide your hands down your shins so you're much more rounded. So if that feels gnarly or unpleasant along the way, so make sure you stop before it gets pinchy. And then your hands can go right over your toes. So there's much more roundness to the shape here. And then once you get into the roundedness, look under your right armpit and then over to your left armpit. So peeking through it, almost trying to see behind yourself when you peek through that armpit. Taking it around. Still moving. Couple more. Good, and then sit yourself up and narrow your legs together, and then put the best of those two worlds together, right? So find the upward expanse in your chest. Start to hinge forward, so your ribs might even get close to your thighs. So there you have this open chest quality. Let your hands drop around your feet somewhere around your outer heels, and then let your upper back just find its natural space. So there's a little more roundness there. Let your gaze tip forward, and then keep tipping it down, and just to the point where your head feels like it's level to the ground, not dropping or lifting. And then swivel your head left and right. If you've ever taken a lot of Kundalini, you can think Sat, Nam, Wahe, Guru. My teacher Nancy, a million years ago back in New York, taught a lot of Kundalini. And this was one of my favorite things that we used to do was Sat, Nam, Wahe, Guru, this swiveling of your head, Sat for truth, name, the highest Guru. Good, and then center it out, and then you might fold a little bit deeper. Feel free to exhale audibly out of your mouth, and then you can ease yourself up to sit. And you can roll yourself down onto your back, or if you want to put your legs up the wall, don't roll down onto the dog, Karen. Or rest some other way that suits you. Just allow your breath to feel natural and to feel full, to feel like it's truly yours. heavy body, easy mind. A.G. Mohan said, the practice of yoga is not a feel-good practice, but it's a practice of transformation. Sometimes transformation doesn't feel the way we want it to. Sometimes it feels destructive. Sometimes it feels disruptive. And sometimes we don't want that disruption or that destruction. And other times we can see that through that breaking of the cycle, through that burning it all down, there might be room for expansion, there might be room for growth in ways that we didn't see before. Might be a chance to break free of a habitual pattern in the mind or the body. The initial arrival on the other side of that disruption is filled sometimes with anxiety. Cause a longing to go back to the way things were. But those things simply no longer are. There is no going back. There isn't even any going forward. It's just being right here. Right now. Start to breathe deeply. Start to move around. If you're on your back, you can bend your knees and tip yourself onto your side. Use your hands to sit yourself up. Bring your hands into your heart. Breathe in. We are one life, we are one light, and we are one love. It's with gratitude that I bow, honoring the divine in each of you. Peace be with you and blessings upon you. Thanks for showing up. Thanks for being here together. Thanks for your energy, even from far away. Good to see you, Sarah, and you, Cecilia, and you, Anne, and you, Claire, and you, Shalia, and you, Jack, and you, Alyssa, you, Karen, and you, Joy. Good to see all of you.
If you get value out of videos like the ones on this channel, please consider becoming a subscriber and hit the like button. It really helps. Down below in the description, you'll find the playlist for this class, as well as links where you can make donations to help make these videos possible. Thanks for tuning in. See you next time.